Hi everyone, I'm Joy and welcome back to Three Koi Fishes. I'm so glad you're tuning in today. We've got a really special guest with us, someone who has first-hand experience raising an autistic son. We're going to dive into his journey and hear some real-world advice that you can actually use. Since there's so much valuable information to share, we've decided to break this discussion into a multi-part series. We'll be exploring the road ahead, covering everything from financial planning to the personal strain a diagnosis can place on a couple. I've listed all the key topics we'll be discussing in the description box below. So let's get right to it. Raj, thanks so much for being here and for taking the time to share your experiences.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Before we dive into the specific questions, could you start by telling us a little about your son?
Yes, so my son's, he's a grown adult now. He's very active. He's full of life. He loves, when he's in the room, you will definitely hear him make happy sounds if he's watching Disney videos, or, he'll come maybe sit next to you. A lot of people think that autistic children or kids or individuals don't have much affection, but he definitely likes, he'll cuddle up to you. He likes getting affection himself. And, he loves, as I say, he's active. He loves hiking, bicycling. He likes doing puzzles. Not just puzzles, but on his iPad, there is, number of apps, whether it's, games and so on. He's actually very adept at using that. So he's really, when he's not in the house, we notice the house is quiet. When he's there, most of the time he's a happy individual. But also there'll be times when, if things are not quite going his way, then you will see when he's frustrated and upset. In the past, he used to have self-injurious behaviors like hitting himself on the head or, tapping on the bridge of his nose. He does that less now. And we'll talk maybe later about how autistic individuals also need this sensory stimulation and how to more constructively help them with that so that they don't hurt themselves.
Thank you for the background. I'd like to now dive into our questions to help parents hear how your journey was like and the challenges. At what age did you first begin to notice signs of autism in your son?
So we have to remember he was born in the late 90s, and 25 years ago, autism was not as well known, and the incidence, at least the diagnosis, was relatively rare. So we started noticing something was different around about the time he was about a year and a half old. So he had a fairly, when he was a baby, he's our second child. He had a quite kind of what we thought was normal development until around 18 months. And then we started to see certain signs. One was, his vocabulary stopped to grow. In fact, started to have a regression. Also, we noticed sometimes he would have tantrums for no good reason, crying, couldn't figure out why he was upset. There were also other signs like he had very kind of rigid kind of behavior patterns. When he would play with toys, it didn't quite look right. He would line up trains, and one of the main things was when we would call him out, he stopped kind of looking at us or holding the gaze and kind of communicating kind of visually like that. He would be in his own world. So those were the sort of signs that we started to see that there was something not going quite right. He was in daycare. Again, we could see that he wouldn't interact so much with other kids. I think you have another video which shows for all those signs, but a lot of the signs that we would now say are classic indicators, they started to appear between the ages of a year and a half to 2.5, maybe 3.5. Around 3 years, it was pretty clear there was something going on. And initially, we thought it was just a language delay. Later on, we had him we got some recommendations from somebody who knew about this topic and suggested that we get him tested. So we got him tested at Children's Health Council in Palo Alto, and they were the first ones to clue us up and say, what he has is not really developmental delay for speech and language. It's autism, and that's how we first found out about it.
After first receiving the diagnosis for your son, how did you navigate those next steps?
So once we had the autism diagnosis, the specialist actually recommended to us what was called LOAS, or now is called ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, ABA therapy. They suggested occupational therapy and also some speech and language therapy. In the early days, we found that ABA was quite helpful in helping him learn, things like colors, uh, trying to get him to respond. So, it's basically a method where you kind of incentivize or reward the wanted behavior and ignore the unwanted response. Also, a lot of data taking and trying to teach the child a kind of sequence, what they call ABC, like antecedent, behavior, and the consequences. And of course, when the consequences are good, that reinforces that behavior. So ABA is really helpful when the child is quite young, when the mind is still in the formative stages. A lot of our basic learning and behavior pattern is developed when you are very young. Unfortunately, we started a bit late with this. And also, I think it makes more sense for this in the early years rather than later. So it did help. I don't know if we had started earlier, if it would have helped more, but it helped to a certain degree for him to acquire some basic skills and vocabulary and so on. So I know there's some kind of different opinions about this, but in our case, it was quite helpful, ABA. That continued until his teenage years, tapering off. And now it's more of we still spend specialized session with him to try and help him kind of learn, read picture books. He likes those stories. But more, I think it's also that, he sees a certain routine in his day when, this, let's say, study sessions are happening. So it's no longer, official therapy, I would say. But we do structure the day where there's a part of the day when, he has some learning opportunities and just maintains and generalizes the skills and, what he's learned in one context, in another context.
Could you talk a little more about ABA and how it helped both your son and your family?
I think we saw, distinct progress, because a lot of the frustration that a autistic individual has is related to communication. They can't necessarily get out what they want to say to you. And I think the ABA helped give some basic tools of communication that, would help get his message or his wants across, and also for us to tell him what's happening next. We find that generally, if we give him a little bit of a heads up, a little bit of a warning about what we're going to do next, like 5-10 minutes ahead of time, he tends to be a lot more ready for it than if we just say, hey, close your book, let's go out now. If you spring it on him, he's less likely to he takes a bit of time to get used to the idea. And sometimes you'll tell him this and he may still kind of it look like he hasn't listened, but actually he's listening. And 5 minutes later, when you say let's go, put your shoes on, he's ready to do it. So I think it helped.
It is well known that communicating with and understanding an autistic child can be challenging for both the parent and the child. How did you and your wife approach this?
This is definitely a learning process. It begins by trial and error, seeing what works, what doesn't work. But over time, we got to understand him and communicate him with a bit better. As I mentioned earlier, like he doesn't speak in phrases or sentences, but he'll have one sentence utterances, like he'll say shower if he wants to do that, or like if he wants to go on a bike ride, he'll come and say bike ride. So we understand that. But also when he's frustrated, you can see it in his behavior. He'll be agitated. He'll be kind of flapping his hands. So you have to learn to read both, whatever verbal cues there are, but also very much, the visual cues. And it's the same for him. He can see when there is something going on, when there's a calm, happy atmosphere. And a lot of it kind of transmits to him. So it's a process of discovery, working out, what's happening. And what's interesting is my son has a sister, older by 2 years, and sometimes, young as she was better at kind of getting on the same wavelength as him. So I think there's a lot of things you can watch for, other than just simple, verbal communication. And a lot of it is just like, looking at, is there a smile on his face? Is he getting frustrated? Is he having a tantrum? So sometimes it's pretty obvious. At other times you just have to see, like if he's ignoring something, it could be because he doesn't know how to kind of really react or play with that toy. But very often it could be also, because he's not interested.
Were there tools available, such as AAC devices, to help with communication?
Yes, I think so. There were tools that we tried. There was like picture book tools where you could press a certain button saying what you wanted to do from, based on icons and so on. We tried that with our son, but he wasn't too much into that. I think he would much rather, use one or two letter utterances. And sometimes if he didn't have the right word, he'd just call out for his mom or me, and kind of, basically then we'd have to guess, right? We have to say, is that what you want? Is that what you want? And then we'd figure out, what it is. So he wasn't too much into those picture books, but I have heard that, for a lot of people, that's a good way of communication. They press the icon, I want to go out, I want to go to the bathroom, I want some more food, I want to go to sleep, I want to, play. And there are icons for that. I'm happy. Understanding emotions is hard, though. We try to teach him to tell us if he's in a happy mood, if he's tired. It's not so easy. He lives in the present.
Of all the different approaches you tried, it seems that verbal communication was the most effective.
Verbally, and just watching his reactions to things, because he when he is interested, he anticipates, and he's there, like, at dinner time, or he loves ice cream, for example, he'll ask for it. So or he'll open the fridge and say, point to it and say, I want to have a cone or whatever. So it works a lot by both one or two word utterances, and also signaling.
Can your son sense your feelings or your wife's emotions?
He definitely picks up on the vibe in the room, and I mean, he's not as good, I would say, as a neurotypical child, but he can see when, when you're concerned or when you're perturbed, and he's much more in sympathy, I would say, with your feeling. Doesn't catch it right away, but yeah, more than once he's come to comfort his mom or me, when he thinks that, I mean, he doesn't know what the exact point of concern is, but he can sense that, there's a different kind of environment. So yes, he can, and also if there's if there's an argument or there's a tension in the room, he can pick up on that as well.
It sounds like your son is a very and loving human being.
Yes, I mean, for his family and people and friends who know him, I mean, he has his idiosyncrasies and behaviors, but on the whole, he's he's a happy individual.
Did his patterns of effective communication evolve, or did they stay the same from childhood into his adult years?
Yes, so this is something that's something that takes a little bit getting used to, because he tends to, his outbound communication, when he talks, he only says one or two words. It's very easy to underestimate him, but in fact, what he can understand, he understands a lot more than what a lot of people give him credit for. So over time, we've learned that just because he doesn't have a kind of two-way conversation, not to underestimate, it is important sometimes to repeat a couple of times, maybe even more, to kind of, as I said, warn him ahead of time and prep him for whatever you want to do next. But he understands a lot more than his own communication out back to you. And really, I think our communication style hasn't changed so much in the last 10-15 years, because once we figured out what works with him, we more or less use the same thing. New people need to get used to that, and try and look for those additional cues that has he got it, or do you need to explain it a different way, or do you want to repeat?
In this first part of our series with Raj, we heard something that so many parents carry quietly the moment you realize your child's development looks different. Raj noticed the signs around 18 months. The language regression, the rigid play, the tantrums that didn't quite make sense. And when the diagnosis came, he and his wife didn't wait. They learned. They adapted. They found what their son actually needed to communicate and feel safe. That is the foundation. But what comes after the early years? In part 2 of the series, Raj takes us inside something most parents don't talk about until it's almost too late: navigating the school system, fighting for the right IEP, and the financial realities that catch families completely off guard. If your child is approaching school age, or if you're already in that season and feeling overwhelmed, you do not want to miss it. Subscribe so part 2 comes straight to you. And if something Raj shared today spoke to your experience, leave it in the comments. This community is here for you. We'll see you in the next video.